Have you ever been in a moment where, within seconds, you knew you were being looked down upon? Not because you did anything wrong, just because you are you. In the first-class lounge of a major U.S. airline, two black female CEOs, Ava and Aria, were asked to stand up from their VIP seats, which they had paid for. A strange, privileged woman pointed at them and said, "This seat is not for people like them." In that moment, the two sisters were faced with a very human choice. Stay patient and let it go, or stand tall and protect your dignity. If it were you, what would you do? Are you calm enough not to explode? Are you brave enough not to bow your head, even though your heart is trembling with hurt? Have you ever been forced to shrink in a space where you should have belonged long ago? Have you ever been judged by the color of your skin, your background, or your silence? And can one seemingly innocuous word change the course of a life, not just yours, but the lives of so many others? This story is not about revenge. It's about choice between your instinct to fight back and your dignity, between personal trauma and greater change, between staying silent and letting your light speak. If you've ever been overlooked, insulted, or deemed not enough, I invite you to walk through this story. You might see yourself somewhere in their journey. Please take a second to like the video, share it with those who need to hear it, and subscribe to my channel to join me on this emotional journey. The first sign that something was wrong came quietly. Not with shouting, not with a glass breaking, not with any dramatic gesture. Instead, it arrived on a soft whisper that floated across the wide, warm air of the Skylux Airlines Prestige Lounge at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. A whisper sharp enough to cut, yet gentle enough to hide behind. The lounge itself was calm that morning. Soft amber lights glowed across the leather seating. The coffee machine hissed like a steady breath. A few business travelers in tailored suits murmured about quarterly reports. Someone laughed faintly near the bar, the kind of laugh that belonged to a person who'd slept well and carried no worries heavier than a laptop. And then came that whisper. They shouldn't be sitting here. Seats like those aren't meant for people like them. It wasn't loud, yet somehow it traveled, like a cold draft slipping under a door. Ava Thompson looked up first. She always did. Her senses had been wired since childhood to pick up the temperature in a room, the tones, the looks, the shifting air. Her twin sister, Aria, continued scrolling through a document, unaware for a moment. Ava touched her hand gently. "Hey," she said softly. "Breathe." Aria didn't ask why. She just exhaled long and slow. The way she had learned after years of moving through rooms where their presence seemed to require explanation. Ava and Aria Thompson, co-founders of Credora, were used to expensive spaces by now, but they never assumed they belonged. They earned their seats every flight, every meeting, every contract. Still, even earned things felt fragile when the wrong person entered the room. And that person had just walked in. Linda Moore, 58, blonde bob curled into a perfect helmet. Pearl earrings, a navy blue suit jacket with gold buttons, the kind that insisted on being noticed. She moved through the lounge like she owned the marble beneath her heels. Her eyes scanned the room with the practiced air of someone always judging whether a place had gone downhill. Behind her trailed her husband, Richard, trying to keep pace while adjusting his glasses and mumbling something she ignored. As she stepped further inside, Linda's gaze landed on the twins, two young black women sitting comfortably in the Prestige Lounge, laptops open, dressed neatly yet casually. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. Just two professionals trying to make the most of a quiet morning. Linda's brows drew together. First confusion, then irritation, then something colder. She leaned toward Richard. "Are they first class?" Richard looked uncomfortable. "Honey, let's just sit down." But Linda didn't sit. She stood still, stiff as a pillar, watching Ava and Aria like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't like the answer to. Ava returned the stare for just a second, calm, direct. Then she went back to her notes. The twins were reviewing their pitch deck for a Series B funding meeting in New York. They'd spent the past 6 months building credibility, refining their product, and proving that their app Credora could help working-class Americans rebuild damaged credit scores. Hard work, long nights, endless rejections before the first yes. This trip mattered. And they had purchased their first-class seats fairly. Expensive, yes, but symbolic, too. A reminder that their journey out of Birmingham, Alabama, out of overlooked neighborhoods and long odds, wasn't an accident. It was labor, family sacrifice, perseverance. And yet all it took was one woman's stare to make the air feel heavier. A staff member approached them. Kyle Brooks, a young gate agent with a tie slightly crooked and a nervous smile that tried too hard. "Excuse me, ladies," Kyle said softly. "Hope your morning's going all right." Ava knew that tone, the soft, hesitant prelude to a request she wasn't going to like. "It is," Ava answered gently. "Is something wrong?" Kyle cleared his throat. He glanced over his shoulder toward Linda Moore, who now stood tapping her heel impatiently. "There, seems to be a seating conflict in first class. One of our platinum members is trying to sit with her husband, and she wants our seats," Aria finished for him. Kyle winced. "She asked if you'd be willing to move to row 7 inches business class. We can offer a travel voucher for the inconvenience." Ava and Aria exchanged a glance. A whole conversation passed in that look. They weren't angry. Not yet. Just tired. Aria rested her palms on her thighs. "We booked these seats weeks ago. We have a meeting first thing after landing. We really need the space to work." Kyle's shoulders sagged. "I understand. I'm really sorry. She's just insisting we try." Ava kept her tone even. "We appreciate you coming over to ask, but the answer is no." Behind Kyle, a sharp voice pierced the air. "Unbelievable," Linda scoffed loudly. I asked politely. "First class should be for serious travelers, not—" Her eyes flicked over the twins again, judgment unmistakable, not people who treat it like a social experiment. Aria stiffened. Ava put a steadying hand on her knee under the table. Richard stepped toward his wife. "Linda, stop. You're embarrassing." "I am not embarrassing anyone," she snapped. "I am a loyal customer. I've been Platinum Elite for 15 years. I should not have to sit away from my husband because 2 girls think they need extra legroom." A few passengers looked up now, quietly watching, pretending not to stare and failing. Ava inhaled slowly. Her heart beat steady, controlled. Linda turned to Kyle with a glare sharp enough to slice paper. "Get your supervisor," she demanded. "This is ridiculous." Kyle hurried away. Aria muttered under her breath. "I swear, some people—" "Aria," Ava whispered. "We stay grounded. That's what we do." But inside, Aria felt a familiar sting, the kind that burned slow and deep, the kind she'd felt in classrooms, boardrooms, stores where employees followed them down aisles just in case. The kind of sting that told her she was being judged before she ever spoke. Linda crossed her arms, staring them down like they were trespassers in her private estate. "I mean," she said to no one in particular, her voice dripping with entitlement, "it's not like they fly first class often. They should be grateful they're even allowed in here." The room shifted, a ripple of discomfort, a crack in the lounge's polished composure. Ava closed her laptop gently. Her fingertips trembled for a brief second, only a second before she stilled them. She looked at Linda fully now, calm, straight, unflinching. "Ma'am," Ava said softly, "we're just trying to get to New York peacefully, that's all." Linda's smile was thin, cold. "Well, sweetheart," she replied, "peace would be a lot easier if people just knew their place." Aria's jaw clenched. Ava felt something tighten in her chest, old memories, old hurts pressing up like they wanted to speak, but she pushed them down. Not now. The lounge supervisor arrived, a woman in her mid-40s named Marilyn Carter, whose expression already showed she had dealt with people like Linda before, too many times. "Mrs. Moore," Marilyn said. "How can I assist you?" Linda pointed at the twins as if identifying a stain on a tablecloth. These two took the seats that should have been ours. "Fix it." Marilyn blinked. "Ma'am, their seats are confirmed." "Well, unconfirm them." "That's not how seating works, Mrs. Moore." Linda rolled her eyes. "Don't play dumb. Move them." A long silence fell. Marilyn swallowed hard. She didn't want this scene. No one did. Ava looked at Marilyn, really looked. The woman's hands were shaking slightly. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was something deeper. The weight of customer entitlement pressing on workers who often couldn't push back. Ava felt sympathy for Marilyn before she felt frustration toward Linda. But Linda was not done. She stepped closer, voice icy. You should listen to me. People like them always get special treatment these days. It's exhausting. I'm the loyal one here. That did it. The last bit of calm in the lounge evaporated. Aria exhaled sharply, a sound halfway between a sigh and a tremor. Ava's heart dropped. Her chest tightened. A wave of heat flushed behind her eyes. Not again. Not this. Not today. Across the room, someone whispered, "Did she really just say that?" And for the first time since arriving at the airport, Ava felt a familiar ache spread inside her, a mixture of shame, anger, fatigue, and something heavier, something she'd carried her whole life without ever asking for it. She swallowed it down, steadying herself, because she knew this moment wasn't over. It was only beginning. For a few seconds, neither Ava nor Aria spoke. The air around them felt different now, thicker, slower, as if the room had leaned in to listen. The soft jazz playing over the lounge speakers seemed suddenly out of place, like a memory trying to drown out something painful but failing miserably. Ava closed her laptop fully, not because she was done working, but because she knew her brain would not process another line of text until she steadied herself. She pressed her fingertips into her knees, grounding herself the way her mother had taught her. When your heart shakes, her mother used to say, anchor it to the earth. Your breath will find its way home. Ava inhaled, held it, then let it go. She felt Aria beside her, tense like a coiled spring. Even without looking, she knew her sister's mind was screaming behind her calm face. Aria always felt things like a flame, bright, quick, ready to leap. Ava felt them like water, deep, quiet, sometimes too heavy. Together, they balanced. Aria finally broke the silence. I knew today would be long, she whispered, but I didn't think it would start like this. Ava gave a small, sad smile. It always starts like this. One comment, one look, one assumption. Aria sighed, turning her eyes toward the window, where a plane taxied slowly along the runway. I hate that it still gets to me. It gets to everyone, Ava said softly. But the truth was deeper, heavier. It didn't just get to them. It shaped them. Birmingham, Alabama. They had left years ago, but the city still lived inside them, the narrow streets, the cracked sidewalks, the corner store where the owner followed them each time they walked in. Aria remembered being 9 years old, clutching a dollar bill for a pack of gum when the store owner blocked her sister from entering. Only one at a time, he'd said. They were the only customers there. Another memory flickered high school. Aria had excelled in math, top of her class. She remembered approaching her teacher with her college essay draft. The teacher scanned the first page, then asked, "Did you get help writing this? It's very articulate." The word still stung. Ava had her own memories, softer on the outside, sharper on the inside. She remembered their father, a quiet, hard-working mechanic, walking into a dealership to buy a used car. The salesman had spoken to him slowly, enunciating every syllable, as though speaking to a child. Later that day, in the kitchen, Ava overheard her father telling their mother, "Maybe if I wore a different shirt or fixed my hair." Ava never forgot the tone he said it in, as if he believed the disrespect had been his fault. These were the things the Thompson twins carried with them, not loudly, not with bitterness, but with the weight of people who knew the world didn't always see them as they truly were. So when Linda Moore said they should know their place, it wasn't a new wound, it was an old scar reopening. Back in the lounge, Marilyn Carter, trying desperately to calm the tension, took a small step forward. "Mrs. Moore," she said gently, "we're doing our best to resolve this." But Linda wasn't listening. She was pacing now, muttering about standards, slipping, and people these days. Every word was a tiny match, and the lounge felt full of gasoline. A man sitting nearby shifted uncomfortably. A woman at the bar stopped stirring her drink. Aria could feel the shame trying to crawl into her chest, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because scenes like this always made her feel exposed, as if everyone in the room were silently calculating whether Linda was right. She clenched her teeth. Ava reached over and squeezed her hand under the table, a gentle squeeze, the kind they used when one twin needed to keep from saying something sharp something honest, something that could be twisted into the wrong story. Aria swallowed hard. "I'm fine," she whispered. Ava knew she wasn't, but she didn't push. Instead, Ava leaned back in her seat, letting the leather cushion hold her. The smell of roasted coffee drifted from the counter. A businessman nearby typed on his laptop, pretending to ignore the confrontation, but failing. The entire lounge was caught in the tension, a stillness that carried judgment, sympathy, discomfort, and curiosity all at once. Ava wondered briefly, painfully, if people assumed they had scammed their way into first class, if they thought the twins were enjoying some special program or diversity perk. A familiar fear crept in, that every success they earned would be doubted, every achievement viewed through the wrong lens. "Why do moments like this always make us feel smaller than we are?" Ava murmured to herself. Aria heard her. "Because people like her want us to feel that way." Ava nodded. "But we don't have to give her what she wants." It was the kind of quiet declaration that didn't need volume to carry power. Kyle returned, fidgeting with the papers he held. "Ladies," he said nervously, "I know this is uncomfortable. I really do. But Mrs. Moore insists we try to resolve this quickly. If you just—" Ava interrupted gently but firmly. "Kyle, I respect that you're doing your job, but these are our seats. We purchased them, and we are not moving." He nodded, eyes flicking again to Linda, who stood with arms folded so tightly her knuckles paled. "Well," she huffed, "if they had any decency, they'd move. Common courtesy, you know." Aria let out a bitter laugh. Courtesy goes both ways. Linda lifted her chin. "I didn't ask for your opinion." Ava felt a ripple of cold move through her. She wasn't angry, not yet, but she was tired. Tired of being called girls. Tired of being an inconvenience. Tired of being spoken of like she couldn't hear the words. Tired of carrying history inside her bones. Tired. She placed her hands together, fingers interlaced, as if holding something delicate. Then she spoke, voice low but steady. "We're not moving. That's final." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The firmness in her tone made Linda's eyes narrow into slits. Ava could feel her pulse thrumming under her skin, but her voice remained grounded, controlled, reminiscent of women who knew storms but never let them shake their foundation. Aria watched her sister, admiration stirring behind her frustration. Ava always knew when to rise and when to stay still. Marilyn cleared her throat. "Mrs. Moore, the seats are confirmed." "There's nothing more we can do unless the passengers agree." Linda scoffed. "Passengers, please. I am a Platinum Elite member. That means something." She turned abruptly, pointing at the twins again. "You don't deserve those seats." The words struck the air like shattered glass. Ava blinked slowly. Her jaw tightened. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, not in panic, but in the rising sense that a line had been crossed. A line she couldn't ignore. Her mother had always warned her and Aria that life would bring them to crossroads, moments when silence would feel safer, but speaking would feel necessary. This was one of those moments. Before Ava could respond, Aria leaned slightly closer and whispered, "If she pushes again, I swear." Ava squeezed her hand once more. "Not yet. But—" "I know," Ava said softly. "I know." The ache in her chest deepened, but she held her calm the way a violinist holds a long note, steady, unwavering, precise. Because calm was its own kind of resistance. Linda's glare intensified, like she couldn't stand the fact that the twins didn't crumble, didn't shout, didn't give her the performance she expected. Discomfort flickered across her face, an odd realization that her cruelty wasn't landing the way she hoped. But that only hardened her resolve. She took one step closer and said, with crisp cruelty, "Girls like you should be grateful you're even allowed in this lounge." No one breathed. Not the businessmen. Not the couple by the bar. Not Kyle. Not Marilyn. Not even Aria. Ava felt her heart drop not in weakness, but in the heavy, devastating familiarity of the moment. A moment that felt like childhood, like history, like every story she'd been told by elders who fought for seats they'd been denied. Her throat tightened, but she forced her breath back into her body. Aria leaned toward her, eyes burning. "Ava," she whispered, "please say something." Ava nodded slowly. Not to Aria, not to Linda, but to herself. Because she could feel it now. The moment before everything changes. The moment just before a storm breaks. The moment she'd been avoiding but couldn't anymore. The moment she would have to decide who she was and who she refused to be. The moment hung in the air like a held breath too long, too heavy, too full of things unsaid. Linda Moore stood over the Thompson twins with a posture that spoke louder than her voice. A posture of certainty. Certainty that she was right, that she was owed something, that the world should rearrange itself to her liking. Ava lifted her chin just enough to meet Linda's gaze. It wasn't defiance, it wasn't challenge, it was simply the quiet dignity of someone refusing to look away. Aria shifted her weight uneasily. But she didn't break eye contact either. For the first time since Linda had approached, she didn't feel small. She felt awake, aware, anchored by something stronger than anger. But Linda didn't see that. She saw refusal as disrespect. She saw calmness as insolence. Unbelievable, she muttered. Two young women, barely adults, thinking they deserve first-class seats over someone who's flown this airline for decades. She turned to Marilyn again. I want their seats. Figure it out. The supervisor pressed her lips together, trying to maintain professionalism even as her patience thinned. Mrs. Moore, she said gently, their tickets are non-transferable. You purchased business-class seats. They purchased first class. I can't override that. You can, Linda shot back. You just won't. A man seated nearby coughed awkwardly. A woman by the window set down her newspaper, watching with concern. The lounge had swallowed the tension whole, the kind of silence that made everyone feel complicit just for witnessing it. Ava felt each stare like a pinprick against her skin. She wondered how many people agreed with Linda quietly, how many believed she and Aria were out of place, how many saw them and thought, are you sure they belong here? That unspoken question echoed in her memories. She remembered walking into her first investor meeting 7 years ago. The receptionist had looked her up and down before saying, deliveries go through the back. She remembered being mistaken for an intern, a receptionist, anything except a founder. People judge fast, her mother had said once. Faster than you can blink. But they're wrong more often than they're right. Ava clung to that memory like a rope in stormy water. Aria, meanwhile, felt a fire building in her chest. Not rage, just heat. Heat from wanting to speak, wanting to push back, wanting to protect herself and her sister. But when she glanced at Ava, she saw the reminder in her sister's eyes. Not every fight needs fire, some need ice. So Aria swallowed her heat. For now. Kyle, the gate agent, stepped forward again, voice trembling with effort. Mrs. Moore, he said softly, we really can't move confirmed first-class passengers. Linda turned toward him slowly, like a queen disappointed in her servant. Young man, she said, I am trying to be patient. But if you don't fix this immediately, I will be contacting corporate. You can be certain of that. Kyle swallowed hard. His eyes darted back to Ava and Aria, filled with apology. I'm so sorry, he whispered under his breath. I didn't mean for it to escalate. Ava offered him a small, forgiving smile. It's okay. You're doing your best. Linda scoffed loudly. Unbelievable! Talking to staff like they're equals. Her tone made something inside Aria snap, but Ava reached out and touched her wrist under the table. Not yet, Ava whispered again. Aria clenched her jaw until it trembled. Supervisor Marilyn took a steadying breath. She looked tired beyond tired, actually. She looked like someone who had spent too many years dealing with the same kind of entitlement and never being allowed to push back. Mrs. Moore, she said firmly now, we're not moving them. That is the final decision. Linda froze. Then she said, cold and sharp, you're protecting them because of how they look. Admit it. The words felt like ice water poured down both twins' spines. Aria's heart pounded against her ribs. She could feel her voice rising in her throat, raw. Wounded, but she held it back. Barely. Ava closed her eyes for a moment, fighting for her breath again. Linda continued, voice swelling with self-righteousness. You all want to look good for the company's diversity numbers. That's what this is. Optics. No one in the lounge moved. Because there it was. The thing everyone had heard before, in different forms, different words, different tones. The thing that said, you only belong here because someone allowed it, not because you earned it. Ava opened her eyes. They were glossy but steady. Her voice, when it came, was barely louder than a whisper. You don't know anything about us. Linda smirked. I know enough. No, Ava said quietly. You really don't. The softness of her tone made the words hit harder. Linda rolled her eyes dramatically. I'm not debating with you. I'm demanding what I paid for. Marilyn raised a hand, almost like a referee in a ring. Mrs. Moore, that's enough. But Linda wasn't done. She stepped closer, invading the sister's space. And then she said the one sentence that turned the room into stone. Girls like you should remember you're not on the same level as us. Gasps, actual gasps, rippled across the lounge. Aria's hands curled into fists before she slammed them open against her thighs to stop herself from reacting. Her eyes burned, her shoulder shaking. Ava's breath quivered. For a moment, she wasn't 8-year-old CEO Ava Thompson. She was 2-year-old Ava, standing in a grocery store aisle while a woman snatched her purse closer the moment Ava walked near. She was 6-year-old Ava, kneeling in a college dorm study group when a classmate casually asked, "How did you get in? Athletics?" She was 20-year-old Ava, sitting alone in a boardroom full of skeptical men, waiting for her chance to prove she deserved her seat. Her throat tightened, but she swallowed the ache. She looked up at Linda and said plainly, "You need to stop." Linda laughed. Laughed. Or what? She taunted. For the first time, Marilyn stepped between them, not aggressively, but protectively. "This is harassment," the supervisor said. "You are violating our conduct policy." Linda waved her off. "Oh, please, I know how this works. They get special treatment because it makes the airline look progressive." A hush fell so deep it felt like the walls pulled closer. Aria whispered, "Ava, please." And Ava finally nodded. She lifted her phone slowly, deliberately. The movement made Linda scoff. "What are you doing, sweetheart? Calling security? Go ahead. They'll take my side." Ava didn't respond. She looked at her sister. "Aria," she said softly, "call Marcus." Aria blinked. Hope flared, and fear flickered at once. "Are you sure?" she whispered. Ava nodded. Yes. Her hands trembled not with fear, but with the weight of a decision she didn't want to make. She never wanted to use names, connections, power. She hated the idea of pulling strings. But she also knew moments like this didn't end by staying quiet. Linda scoffed again, amused. "Marcus? What, is that your brother? Your boyfriend? What's he gonna do? Tweet about it?" Aria dialed. The phone rang once, twice, then clicked as the call connected. A deep, calm voice answered. "Aria, everything all right?" And the lounge, every inch of it froze. Aria spoke carefully, trying to hold steady. "Marcus, we need your help." Linda rolled her eyes. "Oh, perfect. They brought in reinforcements." Ava met Linda's gaze with a quiet strength. "Ma'am," she said, "you're about to find out exactly who Marcus is." The moment Marcus Reed's voice came through the phone, something shifted in the lounge. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was subtle, like the quiet, controlled click of a lock turning on a heavy door. Most people didn't know the sound. But Ava and Aria did. It was the sound of power being summoned, and not the kind that bragged, but the kind that acted. Linda Moore, however, didn't notice the shift. She folded her arms, tapping her heel like she was waiting for a waiter to refill her glass. Aria put the phone on speaker, her hand steady now, though her pulse raced beneath her skin. "Marcus," she said, trying to keep her voice level. "We're at the Skylux Prestige Lounge in Dallas. There's an incident." "Define incident," Marcus said. His voice was low, smooth, almost warm, but with an unmistakable firmness underneath. The kind of tone that made every word sound intentional. Ava inhaled. "A woman is demanding we give up our first-class seats," she said quietly. She's made some comments. Racial ones. Silence. Not a dead silence. A dangerous one." Linda laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, please," she said loudly. "Is that the best you can do? Calling some friend to play hero?" She leaned forward slightly, smirking. "Go ahead. Put him on speaker. I'd love to hear what he has to say." Ava didn't break eye contact. "It's already on speaker." For the first time, Linda paused just slightly, her smile flickering as if someone had turned down the dimmer switch behind her eyes. Marcus spoke again, slower now. Is the lounge supervisor present? Marilyn straightened. Yes, she said. This is Marilyn Carter. Good, Marcus said. Before we continue, I'd like to confirm whom I'm speaking to. Full name, please. Marilyn hesitated only a second. Marilyn Carter, lounge supervisor for Skylux Airlines at DFW. Thank you, he replied. Now, can you explain why my colleagues are being harassed instead of protected? The word colleagues hit the room like a dropped glass. Kyle froze. Marilyn blinked. A couple near the window sat up straighter. Even Richard Moore's eyebrows shot upward. Linda, however, didn't register the warning. She scoffed. Oh, please, your colleagues? You must be joking. Marcus didn't joke. He never joked when he used that tone. Ava saw it now, the way the air tightened slightly, like an invisible wire being drawn taut. Aria closed her eyes briefly, whispering to herself, "Thank God he picked up." "Mrs. Moore," Marcus said evenly, "may I have your full name?" Linda's chin lifted. "Why? Planning to report me?" She laughed again, brittle. "Go ahead. I'll report you right back. This airline should be ashamed of how it's treating loyal members." Marcus's voice softened just a touch. Too soft. A softness that felt like the surface of a frozen lake right before it cracks. "Ma'am," he said, "I asked for your full name." Linda hesitated. Something in his tone finally unsettled her, though she didn't understand why. "Linda Moore." "Thank you," he replied. "Now, Mrs. Moore, I want to be sure I understand." Another measured pause. "You approached two passengers and demanded they give up their seats?" Linda crossed her arms. "I didn't demand. I asked, and I offered a fair compromise." Aria shook her head, muttering under her breath, "Compromise? Please." "And," Marcus continued, "you referred to them as girls like you, correct?" Linda stiffened. "I didn't mean it the way they're implying." "So you did say it." Well, yes, but did you accuse Skylux staff of giving them preferential treatment because of diversity optics?" Linda bristled. That was a reasonable assumption. Kyle pressed his lips together, cheeks red. Marilyn looked horrified, and the entire lounge now watched openly. Marcus exhaled quietly, the kind of breath a person took when disappointment outweighed anger. "Mrs. Moore," he said, "my name is Marcus Reed. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Skylux Airlines, and those two women, Ava and Aria Thompson, are not only valued customers." Aria's eyes widened. "They are partners in an upcoming financial initiative with our executive board." A soft gasp rippled across the lounge. Ava felt something inside her loosen, unravel a thread of exhaustion she had been holding too tightly. Marcus continued, voice steady as stone. "You have harassed them, insulted them, and attempted to strip them of the dignity they earned. You have verbally abused my staff, and you have violated our passenger conduct guidelines several times in under 10 minutes. Linda's face drained of color. I didn't know." "Correct," Marcus said coldly. "You didn't know. You didn't ask. You didn't care. You assumed." The words sliced cleanly. No shouting. No anger. Just truth. "And now," Marcus continued, "you will face the consequences of those assumptions." Linda staggered a step back. "Wait, hold on, you can't be serious." But Marcus was always serious when he said, "Effective immediately, Mrs. Moore, your Skylux ticket is canceled." Kyle's jaw dropped. Marilyn gasped softly. Richard covered his mouth in shock. Linda choked out, "Canceled? You can't, my husband is on this flight." "I'm aware," Marcus replied. "His booking remains valid. Yours does not." Linda sputtered. But the first-class seats will remain with Ava and Aria," Marcus said, "where they belong." Aria pressed a hand to her heart. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply breathed, like someone who'd been underwater and finally surfaced. Ava let out a slow, trembling exhale. Linda shook her head wildly. No, this isn't fair." Marcus didn't waver. "What wasn't fair," he said sharply, "was your treatment of my colleagues. Your sense of entitlement does not override their humanity." Linda's mouth opened and closed, like she couldn't find words. Maybe for the first time all morning, but Marcus wasn't done. "Your status with the Skylux loyalty program is revoked, effective today." Linda froze completely. That was the real blow. Not the canceled ticket. Not the public humiliation. Not even Marcus's authority. It was losing the one thing she thought defined her value, her special status. My status? She whispered. Yes, Marcus said, permanently. A hush fell so complete, even the humming air conditioning seemed to pause. Ava watched Linda's face shift from outrage to confusion, then to something softer, something more human. Fear. Not fear of punishment. Fear of losing the identity she had built around being above others. Richard stepped forward, voice cracking. Marcus, sir, is there anything I can do? Marcus paused. Mr. Moore, you were not part of the harassment. Your booking remains, but I strongly suggest you speak with your wife about her treatment of others. Linda's breath hitched. Ava suddenly felt something unexpected sympathy. Not absolution. Not forgiveness. Just a recognition that even people who harmed others could crumble under their own weight. But the moment passed quickly. This decision is final, Marcus said. Mrs. Moore, you will be escorted from the lounge. Linda stared at the phone like it had betrayed her, then at Ava and Aria, and in her eyes was something that wasn't there before. Realization, not understanding, not regret, just the painful awareness that she was not untouchable. Linda tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Marilyn stepped closer, gentle but firm. Mrs. Moore, I'll walk you out. Linda blinked rapidly, as if trying to wake from a nightmare. This is humiliating, she whispered. Marilyn replied softly. No, ma'am. What you said to them was humiliating. Linda's eyes widened at the quiet truth in the words. Then her shoulders collapsed. For the first time, she looked small. Richard placed a shaky hand on her back. She didn't brush it off. Let's go, he whispered gently. And Linda Moore, who had entered the lounge like royalty, left like someone who had been forced to see herself clearly for the first time. A long, heavy silence followed. No one moved. No one spoke. Ava stared at the empty space where Linda had stood. Aria finally breathed out a sharp exhale, as if releasing hours of tension at once. Marcus's voice returned, softer now. Ava? Aria? Are you okay? Ava blinked back, sudden warmth in her eyes. We're okay, she whispered. Aria nodded slowly. We're okay now. Good, Marcus said. I'll call ahead to make sure your flight is handled properly, and when you land, we'll talk. I'm proud of you both. Ava smiled, a small, fragile thing. Thank you, Marcus. Anytime, he said. You deserve your place in that cabin. The call ended, and the lounge exhaled as one. For a long moment after the call ended, the Skylux Prestige Lounge felt unreal, like the sound had been turned down on the world. Even the soft jazz drifting from the ceiling speakers seemed muffled, floating above the thick stillness left behind. Ava and Aria sat motionless, processing everything that had just happened. Their breaths were slow, uneven. Their hands rested on their laps, fingers still trembling from adrenaline that hadn't fully settled yet. Aria broke the silence first. Did that really happen? She whispered. Ava let out a soft, shaky laugh, not of amusement, but of disbelief. I think so. It felt surreal, strange, heavy and light all at once. Not because they wanted revenge, not because they enjoyed seeing someone punished. That wasn't who they were. But because for once the weight hadn't landed on them. Someone else had carried it. Someone had believed them fast enough, fiercely enough, publicly enough. That feeling was foreign, almost unfamiliar. For years, they had been the ones calming themselves, protecting themselves, shrinking themselves so that situations didn't explode. They had been their own shield, their own advocates, their own everything. And now someone else, someone powerful, had stepped in. Aria exhaled a shaky breath. I wasn't expecting any of that. Ava gave a faint smile. Me neither. But her smile faded quickly, replaced by a contemplative quiet, because beneath the relief was something heavier. Not guilt, but a sadness for how familiar the whole situation felt. A sadness for how many times it had happened silently, without witnesses, without consequences. And how many times it would still happen to them, to others. Aria leaned back, rubbing her forehead. God, my hands won't stop shaking. Ava reached over and squeezed her knee. Mine, either. They shared a small, tired smile. It wasn't joy. It wasn't victory. It was simply a moment of exhaling together. Across the lounge, people slowly returned to their routines, though their eyes occasionally drifted toward the twins, some with sympathy, some with curiosity, others simply processing what they'd seen. Near the bar, the older man who'd been pretending to read his newspaper earlier raised his glass subtly in their direction, an unspoken gesture of support. Ava nodded back. The world had not changed. Not really. But something inside them had shifted. Marilyn Carter, the lounge supervisor, approached them carefully, almost cautiously, as if afraid to disturb a wound. "Ladies," she said, her voice soft and sincere, I want to apologize again." Ava shook her head gently. "You don't have to apologize, Marilyn." "No," Marilyn insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "I do. I should have stepped in harder. Earlier. I should have drawn a line the moment she crossed it. That's my job. Protecting passengers isn't just policy. It's basic human decency." Her eyes glistened. She wasn't putting on a show. She wasn't performing remorse. She truly felt it. And Ava, who had always been good at reading people, saw the sincerity clearly. "You did what you could in a difficult situation," Ava said softly. "We don't blame you." "I do blame myself," Marilyn whispered. "I've worked in customer service for almost 20 years, and people like her, they get used to bullying their way into things. We learn to placate them because it's easier than pushing back. But that's a culture I should have fought harder to change." She looked at her hands, embarrassed. "Marcus, the CFO," she said slowly, still stunned by the name she'd heard on the phone. "He's right. I let her cross lines she shouldn't have been allowed near." Aria shook her head. "Marilyn, she targeted us. Her aggression wasn't because of your lack of authority. It was because she wanted to put us in our place." Marilyn swallowed hard. That truth was clear, painfully clear. "I'll make sure this never happens again," she said firmly. "Not here, not under my watch." The conviction in her voice was new, stronger, like she'd finally found a boundary she'd been afraid to draw for years. Ava smiled gently. "We believe you." That simple sentence made Marilyn's shoulders soften, like someone had lifted a weight she'd been carrying far too long. Kyle Brooks hovered a few feet away, fidgeting nervously with the sleeve of his shirt. He looked like a kid who knew he'd messed up, even if he hadn't meant to. Ava noticed and gestured for him to come forward. He approached slowly. "I'm really sorry," he said. "I should have handled it better. I shouldn't have even asked you to move. That was wrong." His voice quivered with shame. Aria, who could be blunt when she needed to be, softened her tone this time. "You were put in a bad spot. We get it." Kyle nodded, eyes downcast. "Still, I didn't stand up for you the way I should have." Ava reached out and touched his arm lightly. "What matters is that you tried," she said gently. "And you didn't join her. You didn't escalate it. That counts for something." Kyle blinked quickly, surprised by the grace he was being offered. "Thank you," he whispered. Then, quieter. "I really needed to hear that." He stepped back, visibly relieved. As things settled, Marilyn cleared her throat. "Ladies, if you're ready, I'll escort you to the aircraft now. Boarding for first class is beginning." Ava and Aria stood, gathering their bags. Their movements were slow, mindful. The emotional weight of the last 20 minutes still clung to their bodies like humidity. As they walked across the lounge, the businessman who had raised his glass earlier gave them a respectful nod. A woman who'd witnessed everything whispered, "I'm so sorry you had to deal with that." Aria managed a polite smile. "Thank you." But disappointment lingered in her eyes, not because of the apology, but because she'd grown too familiar with hearing it. Marilyn guided them through a private walkway reserved for first-class passengers. The hallway smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and new carpeting, sterile, quiet, controlled. Halfway down the corridor, Aria spoke quietly. "Ava." "Yeah? Does it ever get easier?" she asked. "Being doubted all the time? Being questioned?" Ava didn't answer immediately. She wanted to give her sister something hopeful, something comforting, something strong. But she wasn't going to lie. "Not really," Ava said softly. "But we get stronger, and we get better at choosing what defines us." Aria nodded slowly. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't wipe them. She let the emotion sit where it was, unhidden. Today felt different, Aria whispered. Someone finally fought for us. Ava smiled, her heart swelling with something warm. Yes, she said, and that matters. She paused, choosing her words with care. But we fought for ourselves too, eh? We stayed calm, we stood our ground, we didn't let her take something from us. Aria let out a deep, shaky breath. Yeah, I guess we did, didn't we? You did, Ava said gently, even when it hurt. Aria nodded again, this time with more strength behind it. At the gate, a flight attendant waited for them, a woman in her 30s named Felicia Daniels, with warm brown eyes and a calm but attentive expression. Miss Thompson? Miss Thompson? She asked. They nodded. Felicia smiled. We've been expecting you. Welcome aboard. I'll take you right to your seats. She spoke with genuine warmth, not performance. And that warmth soothed something deep inside both sisters. As Felicia led them down the jet bridge, Aria whispered, Do you think the rest of the trip will be this dramatic? Ava let out a tired laugh. God, I hope not. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of the story. Something bigger was coming. A ripple had begun. And ripples always move outward before they settle. The jet bridge felt cooler than the lounge, quieter too. The sound of the airport hummed dimly behind the walls, like distant static. It was a welcome shift after the emotional weight of the past half hour. Felicia Daniels, the flight attendant, walked ahead with an easy, steady stride. She didn't rush. She didn't slow too much. She simply set a pace that felt gentle, something the twins needed without having to ask. Ava and Aria followed, their steps slightly out of sync at first, then slowly matching one another's rhythm, as they always did when the world became too heavy. A silent reminder that they were in this together. Aria inhaled deeply, letting the cold, recycled air of the jet bridge fill her lungs. It smells like aluminum and hand sanitizer, she murmured. Ava huffed a soft laugh. Smells like a break. Aria nodded. Yeah, like we finally stepped out of the fight. But the truth hovered under her words. The fight wasn't over. It just shifted locations. When they boarded the aircraft, the warm light of the first-class cabin welcomed them. Soft beige leather seats, dark walnut trim along the storage compartments, a faint scent of citrus and fresh linen. Everything carefully curated to feel restful, elevated. Felicia motioned toward the first row. Seats, 1A and 1B. Make yourselves comfortable. We'll take good care of you. Her tone wasn't rehearsed. It carried a kindness that felt rare in busy airports. Ava smiled at her. Thank you. Aria added softly. Really, thank you. Felicia's eyes softened. I heard what happened. The twins exchanged a quick glance. Felicia continued, voice quiet and sincere. People like her. They show up more often than we like to admit. I'm glad someone stood up for you. Aria let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. We're glad too. Felicia nodded once, giving them space, then slipped back toward the galley. The cabin was mostly empty. No other passengers had boarded yet. It gave the space an almost sacred quiet. Ava slid her carry-on into the overhead bin, then sank into 1A, the seat molding around her like a sigh. Aria put her bag away and settled into 1B, leaning her head back with a low groan. God, she whispered, I feel like I ran a marathon. You kind of did, Ava murmured. Aria tilted her head slightly toward her sister. Do you feel weird? Weird how? Aria shrugged. I don't know. Like I should feel triumphant, or vindicated, or something big. But all I feel is tired. Ava nodded softly. Yeah, same. They sat quietly for a moment. It wasn't that they didn't understand the significance of what happened. They did. A powerful man had defended them. A racist passenger had faced consequences for once. The people in the lounge had seen the truth play out. Justice, however small, had landed. But justice didn't erase the sting. It didn't erase years of accumulated hurts. It didn't erase the ache that lived deep in their chests from a lifetime of being doubted before being seen. And right now, that ache felt tender. Aria glanced at her hands. The faint tremble had subsided, but the memory of it still made her chest constrict. Ava, she said quietly. When she said girls like you, something in me just cracked. It hurt in a way that felt too familiar. Ava's heart clenched. I know, she whispered. Me too. Aria swallowed hard. I hate that it got to me. Ava shook her head gently. It didn't get to you. It touched something old. That's different. Aria blinked. Her jaw trembled slightly. Sometimes I feel like no matter how far we go, some people will only ever see us one way. Ava's voice softened. Maybe. But those people don't get to define us. They don't know the journey. They don't know the sacrifices. Aria looked down at her lap. I know, but part of me wishes I'd said something. Pushed back harder. Been stronger. Ava reached across the console and rested her hand over her sister's. You were strong, she said firmly. You held your ground. You didn't let her drag you down to her level. Aria's eyes glistened. I'm tired of being the one who has to take the high road. Ava's voice broke a little. Me too. And for a moment, neither sister spoke. They just held hands. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as warm amber tones illuminated the overhead panels. The hum of passengers beginning to board drifted faintly from behind the curtain separating first from business. Ava wiped a thumb under her eye. Not tears, just emotion. Heavy emotion. Remember what Dad used to say? Ava murmured. Aria sniffed. Which part? He had a lot of sayings. Ava smiled. He'd say, your dignity isn't up for negotiation. Aria laughed softly. Yeah, he'd say it like he was reading scripture. And, Ava continued, Mom would say, keep your dignity close, but keep your joy closer. Aria nodded. I needed to hear that. Ava squeezed her hand. We all do. The curtain rustled behind them as boarding continued. A couple walked in, chatting softly. A man passed by with a polite nod. A middle-aged business traveler settled into 2C, giving the twins an acknowledging glance, though he didn't stare. Everything looked normal, almost too normal for what the past half hour had held. Aria leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. Do you think everyone in the lounge will talk about it? Ava shrugged. Probably. People always talk about chaos. But if they talk about it honestly, maybe it'll help someone else understand why moments like that matter. Aria exhaled. I hate being the lesson. Ava gave her a wry smile. Better the lesson than the lie. Aria let out a small chuckle, weak but real. Their humor, even tired, still had a softness to it. A few minutes passed in quiet. Then, Ava's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen Marcus had texted. You two okay? Need anything before takeoff? Ava typed back. We're okay. Just processing. Thank you for everything. Really. His reply came quickly. You shouldn't have had to deal with any of this. Call me when you land. We'll talk through next steps. Ava closed her eyes briefly, letting gratitude steady her breath. Aria leaned sideways. What'd he say? He just wants us to call when we land. Aria nodded. Of course he does. He's probably pacing in his office right now. Ava chuckled. Most likely. But beneath the humor was something real, a sense of being valued, protected, seen. And that mattered. More than they could admit out loud. Felicia returned with 2 glasses of sparkling water garnished with lemon slices. I thought you might want something refreshing before takeoff, she said gently. Ava smiled gratefully. This is perfect. Aria nodded. Thank you. Felicia lowered her voice. If there's anything you need during the flight, just let me know. Her tone held no pity, only genuine care. Ava's chest warmed. We appreciate it. Felicia gave a small nod and stepped away. They sipped their drinks slowly. The bubbles tingled on their tongues, soft and effervescent. A tiny, simple comfort. Aria swallowed, then whispered, I feel like I should be celebrating that she got what she deserved, but all I feel is heavy. Ava looked out the window, watching ground crew moving luggage, the sun glinting sharply off the tarmac. That's because you're human, she said softly, not petty. Aria rested her head against the seat. Maybe, Ava added gently. Justice isn't supposed to feel like joy, it's supposed to feel like balance, and balance can be heavy. Aria closed her eyes, letting the words settle. She didn't respond at first. Then finally, you always know how to say things. Ava smiled faintly. Only because I feel them too. Passengers continued boarding. The cabin filled slowly with soft conversations and the rustling of coats and bags. Ava glanced at her sister again. Do you want to talk about the meeting tomorrow? Aria huffed. Not really. My brain can only handle one crisis at a time. Ava laughed quietly. Fair. But the meeting was important, maybe the most important one they'd had since starting Credora. A major fund was considering leading their Series B round. This trip wasn't just symbolic, it was pivotal. They needed to be sharp, present, focused. And yet, the emotional weight from the lounge clung to them, threatening to dull their confidence. Ava closed her eyes, breathing deeply. We can't let her live in our heads, she whispered. Aria sighed. I know. We deserve this seat, Ava said quietly. Aria opened her eyes. We do. We deserve tomorrow's opportunity. Yes, we deserve everything we've worked for. Aria nodded slowly. We do. Ava finally leaned back. Then that's where our energy goes next. Aria inhaled deeply, letting the words settle like a grounding stone. Her voice softened. Okay, tomorrow, we focus on that. Ava smiled. Together? Aria reached out and squeezed her hand. Always. The doors of the aircraft closed with a soft, final thud. The outside noise faded. The world seemed smaller, safer. For the first time since stepping into the airport, the twins felt something close to peace. Not full peace. Not yet. But peace in progress. The aircraft pushed back from the gate with a low, steady rumble. The floor beneath Ava and Aria vibrated just enough to remind them they were suspended in a moment between two worlds. The world they'd just come from, tense and bruised, and the world ahead where a new opportunity waited. Aria closed her eyes as the engines powered up. Normally, she loved this part, the rise of momentum, the trembling anticipation. The exact second the wheels left the ground always felt to her like a promise that she was moving forward, rising above everything that tried to hold her down. But today, her chest felt tight. Not panic, not fear, just emotion that had nowhere to go yet. Ava sensed it immediately. She angled her body slightly toward her sister. You okay? She murmured. Aria nodded, but her throat bobbed with the effort. Yeah. I didn't realize how much that whole thing shook me. Ava reached across the armrest and gently threaded her fingers through Aria's. It's allowed to shake you, Ava said quietly. Doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Aria inhaled shakily. The engines roared louder now, accelerating them down the runway. Sometimes I wish I could be more like you, she murmured. Calm, composed. You never let things get under your skin. Ava gave a small laugh, barely audible over the engine noise. If only you knew how wrong you are. The aircraft lifted smooth, powerful, steady. The runway fell away beneath them, shrinking to a thin gray line. The clouds awaited them above. Aria opened her eyes and glanced at her sister. What do you mean? Ava looked out the window for a moment before answering. You think I'm calm because I'm unbothered, Ava said softly. But it's the opposite. I feel everything, sometimes too much. The only difference is, I push it deeper. I've been doing that since we were kids. Aria frowned gently. That sounds lonely. Ava exhaled. It is. The engine roar softened as the plane angled upward, slicing through low, thin clouds like cotton. Aria squeezed her sister's hand. I don't want you carrying it alone. You don't, Ava said. You help me stay grounded. And you help me stay soft, Aria murmured. Ava smiled faintly. We make each other whole. The plane leveled off, the hum of the engines dropping into a calmer, steadier rhythm. The fasten seatbelt sign remained on, but the tension inside the cabin slowly loosened, much like the tension inside the twins. Felicia reappeared, walking down the aisle with her practiced, graceful stride. She stopped beside their row, her voice hushed but warm. Ladies, can I get you anything to start with? Tea, sparkling water, maybe something warm? Ava looked up. Herbal tea sounds nice. Aria nodded. Something calming. Chamomile, maybe? Felicia smiled. Of course. I'll bring it right out. As she walked away, Aria leaned back in her seat. I like her, Aria said. She has presence. Ava nodded. She makes people feel safe. That's rare. Aria let her gaze drift slowly across the cabin. I think today made me realize how much safety matters. Not just physical safety, the emotional kind. Ava felt a gentle tug in her chest. Yeah. It's like, people assume success protects you, Aria said. Money, titles, status. They think it shields you from being hurt. It doesn't, Ava whispered. Not even a little, Aria added. Their voices stayed soft, not out of fear, but because vulnerability often whispered instead of shouted. A flight attendant's voice came over the intercom, thanking passengers for flying Skylux, explaining their cruising altitude, and announcing the meal service. The usual script. Ava listened with half her mind, the other half wandering through memories. Pieces of the lounge scene flickered through her thoughts. Linda's words, Marcus's voice, Marilyn's expression of shame. Aria noticed Ava drifting. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. Ava hesitated. Just the way everything played out. I keep replaying it in my mind, wondering if we should have done something differently. Aria shook her head immediately. No, don't do that. Don't blame yourself for someone else's cruelty, Ava sighed. It's not blame, it's reflection. I keep thinking about how many times things like that happened when no one stepped in. No Marcus, no witnesses, just us. Aria felt her throat tighten. I know, that's the part that hurts the most. Ava looked down at her hands. Today was different, but only because someone else had the power to make it different. Aria didn't respond right away. Then she said, Ava, do you ever feel like we're climbing a ladder that keeps getting taller? Ava lifted her gaze. Every day, Aria exhaled slowly. And sometimes it feels like people are waiting for us to slip. Ava nodded. But we don't slip. Not because we're perfect, but because we're determined. And stubborn, Aria added, a small smile tugging at her lips. Ava smiled back. Very stubborn. Felicia returned with 2 steaming mugs on a tray. She set them down carefully. Chamomile with a little honey, she said. Good for nerves. Good for grounding. And good for helping you feel human again. Aria blinked. The words hit her unexpectedly deep. Thank you, she said, voice soft. Felicia held her gaze for a moment. You deserve to be here. Never let anyone make you question that. Something in Aria's chest loosened just slightly. Felicia stepped away quietly. Ava lifted her mug and inhaled the steam. She has no idea how much we needed that. Aria nodded. Feels like she sees us. Ava took a small sip. The warmth soothed her throat, settling gently into her chest. After a moment, Aria spoke again tentatively. Ava, do you ever feel guilty? Ava glanced at her. For what? For succeeding, Aria whispered. Ava blinked, surprised. Guilty? Why would you feel that? Aria fidgeted with the blanket folded at her seat. Because every time something like this happens, I think about all the people who go through worse. People who don't have the support we had today. People who can't call someone like Marcus. People who get hurt and no one sees it. Ava stared at her sister, heart softening. Aria, she said gently, our success doesn't take anything from anyone. I know, Aria said. But sometimes it feels like surviving something. Gives us a responsibility. Ava paused, letting the words settle. You're right, she said quietly. We do have responsibility. But not guilt. Responsibility to create doors, to open spaces, to speak up, to protect each other, Aria added. Ava smiled. And to protect the ones who come after us. Aria nodded, a warmth blooming slowly in her chest. That's what I needed to hear. The plane shuddered gently as it sliced through a patch of thin clouds, the subtle turbulence shaking their tea slightly. But the moment held steady. They fell into a quiet lull, not heavy, not strained, just reflective. The kind of silence that felt like healing, slow and fragile. Ava stared out the window, watching sunlight dance across the tops of clouds that looked like soft cotton fields, stretching endlessly in every direction. You know what I keep thinking about? She said after a while. What? Aria asked. The idea of belonging. Ava rested her head against the seat. How many times we've walked into rooms and felt like we had to prove we deserved to be there. Aria hummed in agreement. Too many. And how today, Ava continued, even after everything we've built, one woman's ignorance almost made us question ourselves. Aria bit her lip. Almost. Ava smiled. Almost. Aria leaned back, letting the hum of the engine soothe her. We belong everywhere we earn our place, she said. And we earned this seat. And tomorrow's meeting? Ava added. And every step after, Aria agreed. They didn't say the rest out loud, but it vibrated softly between them. And no one gets to take that from us. A few minutes later, the captain announced they'd be starting in-flight service soon. A flight attendant began preparing the meal carts. Ava adjusted her seat and let her body relax deeper into the cushion. For the first time today, she felt something close to rest. Aria looked at her and said softly, Ava, yeah? I'm proud of us. Ava smiled a real, warm smile. Me too. And I'm proud of you, Aria added, for how you handled everything, for holding both of us together. Ava blinked, emotion pricking behind her eyes. And I'm proud of you, for feeling deeply, for fighting your instincts without losing your fire. Aria's lips trembled with a soft smile. We make a good team. The best, Ava whispered. They leaned their heads together gently. Outside the window, the clouds drifted beneath them like waves of a calm ocean. Inside the cabin, for the first time since the confrontation began, the sisters felt a fragile but real peace. A peace earned. A peace deserved. A peace reclaimed. Back on the ground in Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, the Skylux Prestige Lounge was no longer quiet. Not in the way it had been earlier, calm, muted, polished. This silence felt different. A heavy, tense, waiting silence. The kind of silence that comes after an explosion, when the smoke is still hanging in the air and people are unsure whether they should run or stand still. Support agents whispered in small clusters. Some pretended to go about their tasks, polishing silverware, restocking snacks, tapping nervously on tablets, but everyone's eyes kept drifting toward the small operations office at the back of the lounge. Because inside that room, a storm had begun. Marilyn Carter closed the glass door behind her, leaving the noise of the lounge outside. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears as she stood facing the regional operations director, Gerald Whitaker, a man she had worked under for nearly a decade. Gerald's face was a rigid mask. His jaw was tight. His eyes were stone. He held a printed transcript in his hand, the same transcript Marcus Reed had sent to corporate within minutes of the call ending. Marilyn, he said, pacing with a slow, deliberate gait. Do you have any idea the scale of the situation we're dealing with right now? Marilyn clasped her hands in front of her. Yes, sir. I understand. No, Gerald snapped. I don't think you do. He tossed the transcript onto the desk. It landed with a sharp, unforgiving slap. You weren't dealing with two upset passengers. You weren't dealing with a simple customer complaint. You were dealing with the owners of this airline, the daughters of the man who can rewrite your entire future with one phone call. Marilyn took a slow breath. I understand the gravity of the mistake, she said. But I did step in. I defended them. Gerald narrowed his eyes. Not fast enough, she winced. Heard from Marcus yet? Gerald asked coldly. Marilyn nodded. Yes. He contacted me directly. He wants me in New York tomorrow morning. Gerald let out a low whistle, muttering under his breath. You must have done something right then. The rest of us? We're not getting invitations. We're getting investigations. Marilyn blinked. Investigations? Gerald leaned against the desk, rubbing his temple. Marcus and the board are launching a full-scale review of all VIP lounge procedures nationwide. Every complaint, every recorded incident, every employee. Marilyn's heart thudded harder. This isn't just about the twins, Gerald said grimly. Their situation just lit the fuse. This review is going to uproot a lot of people who've been coasting under the radar, some of them higher than you. Marilyn swallowed. Sir, what about Kyle? Gerald sighed. He'll be taking mandatory leave until corporate decides what to do. She closed her eyes. Guilt tugged hard at her ribs. Kyle's young, she said quietly. He messed up, but his intentions weren't malicious. Gerald raised a brow. Intentions don't matter when you create a liability. This is an airline. One mistake in the wrong moment can cost millions. Marilyn inhaled shakily. Gerald studied her face for a moment. Look, he said, softer now. I'm not here to tear you apart. You've always been solid. You care about people. That's why you got the supervisor role in the first place. He paused. But understand this, Skylux is about to shed an old skin. Corporate tolerance for incidents like today, it's gone, completely gone. And once the board finishes restructuring, half the management ladder won't exist anymore. Marilyn felt the floor shift beneath her. "What are you saying?" she whispered. Gerald exhaled heavily. "You might survive this," he said. "Kyle, probably won't. Half my peers, definitely won't. And as for Linda Moore," he let out a humorless laugh. "She has no idea what's coming." That was true. At that exact moment, Linda stood in Terminal C near baggage claim, pacing angrily in front of a row of uncomfortable plastic chairs. Her husband, Richard Moore, had arrived 20 minutes earlier after flying in from Chicago. He looked tired, irritated, and far more composed than his wife. "Richard, listen to me," Linda fumed. "They humiliated me. They canceled my ticket. They escorted me out like some criminal. And all because two girls threw a tantrum." Richard, a corporate consultant in his mid-50s, closed his eyes for a second. "Linda, please keep your voice down. This is discrimination," she declared loudly. "Reverse discrimination. I have rights." Richard clenched his jaw. "Did you insult them?" he asked. Linda scoffed. "Of course not." "Linda." She lifted her chin. "I simply told the truth. People like them." "Stop!" he snapped. She froze. A few heads turned toward them. Richard lowered his voice. "Please tell me," he said urgently, "that you did not insult the daughters of the CFO." "The CFO?" Linda repeated slowly. "I thought it was some manager." "No, Linda," Richard hissed. "Marcus Reed is not some manager, and he's not just the CFO. He sits on the board. He has more power than half the executives in the company." Linda blinked rapidly. Richard ran a hand through his hair. "And I just got a call," he said, voice tight with dread. "Our corporate contract with Skylux is on hold until further notice. They're reevaluating our partnership because of your misconduct." Linda stared as if slapped. "Richard, sweetheart, I didn't." He held up a hand. "Linda, your words have consequences." Everything inside her seemed to collapse inward. "No," she whispered. "No, this can't be happening. I didn't mean—" "Intent doesn't matter," he said sharply. "Impact does. And your impact may cost my company its largest travel partnership." Linda's breath hitched. Tears welled. Richard looked away, exhausted. "We'll talk at home," he said. "Not here." But Linda wasn't listening anymore. Her world had tilted, cracked, buckled under the weight of her own entitlement. And for the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Meanwhile, back in the lounge office, Gerald's phone buzzed. He glanced down at the screen. His eyes widened. "Oh, God," he muttered. Marilyn straightened. "What is it?" Gerald slowly lowered the phone. "There's more fallout," he said. "Corporate just forwarded an internal memo." Marilyn swallowed hard. "What does it say?" Gerald cleared his throat. "Effective immediately. All senior personnel responsible for VIP operations are suspended pending review. Regional directors, district leads, process coordinators, anyone tied to customer relations pipelines." Marilyn tensed. "That includes you?" she whispered. Gerald nodded grimly. "It includes me." "And Kyle?" "He's already locked out of the system." Marilyn's breath caught. "Oh, no." Gerald continues reading. "And there's going to be a mandatory training overhaul, written and overseen by—" He paused, blinking. Marilyn raised an eyebrow. "By who?" Gerald slowly handed her the phone. She read the memo. Then she looked up, stunned. "By me?" she whispered. Gerald gave a small nod. "Looks like they saw something worth keeping," he said. "They don't want to fire you. They want to use you." Marilyn's throat tightened. Tears threatened to gather, but she blinked them back. I just did what was right," she murmured. "Exactly," Gerald said, "which is why you're still standing." Marilyn let out a shaky breath. "Gerald, what about you?" He smiled sadly. "I'll be fine. I'll land somewhere. Corporate reshuffles happen every few years. But this one? This is bigger than usual. The board wants change, and after what happened today, they'll get it." He sighed, rubbing his temples again. "Marcus isn't playing around," he added. "He's shifting the culture of this airline." Marilyn nodded quietly. She could feel it now, the weight of responsibility. The weight of being asked to help reshape something broken. It was terrifying, but also hopeful. For the first time in a long time, She felt something stirring in her chest. A sense of purpose. A chance to do things right. Outside the office, the lounge murmured with uncertainty. Employees paced, whispered, avoided eye contact. Everyone felt the tremors of what had happened. Everyone understood that an era had ended and a new one, stricter, smarter, more accountable, was coming. But none of them knew that the true storm was just beginning. Far above them, in the quiet cabin of a plane cutting through the clouds, two sisters were drinking warm tea, unaware of the institutional upheaval they had triggered simply by standing their ground. They did not know that their courage would become the catalyst for policy changes across the entire airline. They did not know that their names were already echoing through corporate hallways. All they knew was that they had finally exhaled, and far below them, the world was rearranging itself in response. The cabin lights dimmed to a warm, gentle glow, soft enough to soothe the senses, bright enough to keep the world from fading completely into shadow. The hum of the engines had settled into a steady, peaceful rhythm. It almost felt like the plane itself was exhaling, easing into the long journey through the night sky. Ava closed her laptop after reviewing the investor packet for the 10th time. She wasn't really absorbing the information anymore. Her mind drifted back to the lounge, back to the tension, the confrontation, the endless weight of other people's assumptions. Aria noticed her sister staring blankly at the dark screen. "You're not reading that," Aria murmured. Ava smirked. "Totally am." "Ava." "Okay, fine," she sighed. "My eyes were open, but my soul was asleep." Aria laughed quietly, a soft, warm laugh that made the air feel lighter. "Take a break," Aria said gently. "We've earned one." Ava leaned her head back. "I don't know if I know how to take breaks anymore." Aria looked at her with a tender seriousness. "You do. You just forget." A few seconds passed before Ava whispered, "Maybe." A small part of her hated how true that felt. The meal service began shortly after. Felicia returned with a tray draped in a crisp white linen cloth. She placed it gently on the table between them and uncovered two elegant dishes, grilled salmon with herb butter for Ava and roasted chicken breast with rosemary for Aria. "Dinner is served, ladies," Felicia said warmly. "And after this, dessert is on the way," Chef Paul insisted. Aria raised an eyebrow. "Chef Paul?" Felicia's smile widened. "He's been with Skylux for years. He heard about what happened earlier and wanted to make sure tonight felt better." Ava blinked at her. "That's very kind." Felicia nodded. "Sometimes kindness is the quiet way we push back at the world." Ava felt something soften inside her chest at that. Aria smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Felicia. Just call if you need anything," she said before disappearing down the aisle. The sisters ate slowly. Not because the food wasn't good, it was excellent, but because neither of them was ready to let their thoughts settle. The dining lights cast a soft glow on their faces, highlighting the exhaustion in Aria's eyes and the quiet determination in Ava's. The gentle clinking of silverware was one of the only sounds in the cabin. Halfway through her meal, Aria set her fork down. "Ava, can I ask you something?" she said, her voice unusually hesitant. Ava looked up. "Of course. Why didn't you snap back at her?" Aria's voice was almost a whisper. "When Linda talked down to us, when she said all those things, you stayed calm. I couldn't have done that." Ava swirled her fork through the herb butter, watching it melt into the salmon. "I wanted to," Ava admitted. "Every part of me wanted to." Aria leaned in. "So why didn't you?" Ava took a breath, a slow, deliberate one. "Because I've learned the hard way," she said, "that people like her are waiting for us to lose our cool. They want the stereotype. They want the angry black woman. They want the outburst so they don't have to look at their own behavior." Aria swallowed. "But that's not fair. We're human. We get angry too." "I know," Ava whispered. "But fairness has never been evenly distributed." Aria's chest tightened. "That's what I hate." Ava looked at her sister with a soft kind of strength. "I know," she said, "but our anger deserves better than to be wasted on someone like her." Aria gazed down at her plate. "You're stronger than I am." "No," Ava corrected gently. "I'm just practiced." Aria blinked slowly, absorbing the truth of that. Being practiced wasn't the same as being unhurt. It was just surviving in a way that didn't leave scars on the surface. After dinner, Felicia returned with dessert, 2 slices of warm apple tart topped with vanilla cream. The scent of cinnamon filled the cabin, comforting and nostalgic. Ava smiled for the first time in an hour. "This looks incredible." Aria inhaled deeply. "Smells like home." Felicia chuckled. "Chef Paul said his grandmother used to make it. He wanted tonight's dessert to feel safe." Safe. That word held weight. It made Aria's throat tighten. It made Ava's eyes soften. When Felicia walked away, the twins ate in silence for a moment, savoring the warmth. After a few bites, Aria set her fork down again. "Ava, can I tell you something and you promise not to make fun of me?" Ava grinned. "I would never." "You literally would." "Okay, fine, I would. But I'll try not to this time." Aria gave her a sideways glare before exhaling. "I was embarrassed," she said quietly. "Not because of Linda, not because of the confrontation. I was embarrassed that I froze, that you had to be the steady one again." Ava's expression softened completely. "Aria." "No, let me finish," Aria whispered. "I hate that I felt small, that I let her words cut me, that I still carry this fear even after everything we've built." Ava reached over, taking her sister's hand. "There is nothing weak about feeling hurt," Ava said. "You're not made of stone. You're made of fire and intuition and empathy. And those qualities? They're why people follow you." Aria looked down at their intertwined fingers. "But you're always the calm one," Aria murmured. "You're always the one who steps forward. And I'm afraid that one day I'm going to disappoint you." Ava's heart clenched. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You could never disappoint me." A tear slid down Aria's cheek, surprising her. She brushed it away quickly, but Ava caught the motion. "Hey," Ava said softly, "let it be okay. Just for tonight. Let yourself feel what you feel." Aria breathed shakily. Ava squeezed her hand. "You don't have to be steel all the time," Ava said. "And you don't have to match my strength. We carry different parts of this journey. That's why we work." Aria nodded slowly, her chest tightening and loosening at the same time. "I'm just tired, I think." "I know," Ava said. "Me too." "And scared," Aria whispered. Ava didn't hesitate. "Me too." Aria looked up sharply. "You? Scared?" Ava nodded. "All the time," she admitted. "I'm scared of messing up, of letting us down, of being the one who fails at the wrong moment. I just don't show it." Aria's eyes widened. "Why not?" "Because someone has to look steady," Ava said gently. "And I can't stand the thought of you carrying that burden." Aria let out a shaky breath. "Ava." Ava's voice cracked, just slightly. "But that doesn't mean I'm not terrified sometimes." Aria reached over and pulled her sister into a tight hug. They held each other for a long moment. Two women, two warriors, two sisters who had been battling the world in different ways but on the same path, always. When they finally pulled back, both wiped at the corners of their eyes. Not ashamed, just human. The dessert plates were cleared away. The cabin lights dimmed further, leaving a warm, amber glow that reflected off the windows like candlelight. The passengers around them were settling in. Some were already asleep. Some were reading. A few whispered quietly in the dark. Aria drew her blanket up over her lap and leaned her head against the headrest. "Ava?" she murmured. "Yeah? Do you ever think about quitting? About walking away from all of this? The company, the pressure, the climbing, the proving?" Ava didn't answer right away. She stared at the window, watching tiny stars flicker against the deep navy sky. "Sometimes," Ava whispered, "sometimes I imagine a different life, a quieter one." Aria nodded. "Me too. But then I think about what we built," Ava said softly. "What it means, who it helps, what it symbolizes for girls who look like us. And I realize I'm not done fighting yet." Aria smiled through tired eyes. "Neither am I." Ava turned toward her sister. "And as long as we're doing it together, I can keep going." Aria reached over, gently brushing Ava's hand with her fingers. "Together," she agreed. The plane glided smoothly through the dark, heading toward New York and all the consequences waiting below. But for now, for this small sliver of time, they allowed themselves to rest. Because tomorrow, they would rise again. Stronger, clearer, united. The wheels touched down at JFK just as the first hints of dawn stretched across the horizon. A thin ribbon of pale orange glowed against the dark blue skyline, a reminder that even long nights eventually gave way to morning. The landing was smooth and quiet, a gentle thud, a soft deceleration, a calm arrival after an emotionally heavy flight. Ava stirred awake, blinking slowly as the light shifted through the cabin. She had drifted into an unplanned sleep just long enough to reset her breathing, not long enough to erase the weight of the day before. Aria was already awake, gazing out the window at the early morning tarmac lights, her expression contemplative. "Morning," Ava murmured, her voice still rough with sleep. Aria turned her head and smiled softly. "Hey, you snored." "I did not." "A little bit." Ava groaned. "Don't start." Aria laughed quietly. It was cute. Ava rolled her eyes, stretching stiffly in her seat. "Remind me never to travel overnight again." "You say that every time," Aria said. "And every time I still mean it." They both chuckled, the familiar banter easing them back into the world. The seatbelt sign switched off with a small chime. Cabin lights brightened slightly. Other passengers began retrieving their bags and checking their phones, their faces illuminated by blue screens reflecting messages they had missed during the flight. Felicia approached with her warm, steady smile. "Good morning, ladies. Welcome to New York." "Thank you," Ava said with genuine affection. "You've taken such good care of us." Felicia pressed a hand gently to her chest. "You took care of yourselves long before I came along. I just tried to honor that." That line struck deeper than she realized. Aria stood and touched Felicia's arm lightly. "We won't forget you." Felicia smiled, eyes soft and knowing. "And I won't forget you either. Good luck today. New York moves fast, don't let it shake you." Ava nodded. "We won't." They gathered their carry-ons and stepped into the aisle, joining the slow procession toward the exit. But the moment they reached the jet bridge, something unexpected was waiting. Two Skylux uniformed staff members. A woman in her early 50s with silver hair pinned neatly back, Dana Whitmore, the head of East Coast first-class operations. Beside her stood a sharply dressed man with dark-rimmed glasses, Michael Tran, corporate liaison for executive passengers. Both wore expressions of respect and something like apology. Ava and Aria exchanged uncertain glances. Dana stepped forward first. "Miss Thompson." "Miss Thompson," she said warmly. "Welcome to New York. I'm Dana, and this is Michael. We've been asked to personally escort you through the terminal." Aria blinked. "Escort us? Why?" Michael spoke gently. "Skylux leadership wanted to ensure your arrival experience was seamless. And we wanted to extend our apologies for everything you endured yesterday." Ava raised a brow. "You don't need to apologize for something you didn't do." Dana's smile was soft but firm. "We do, because the culture that allowed it to happen touches all of us, and it's our responsibility to change that culture, not yours." The twins fell silent. Aria swallowed. "Thank you." Dana nodded. "Right this way." Walking through the jet bridge and into the terminal felt surreal. A small team had cleared a private route for them, bypassing the bustle of early morning travelers. The airport was awake, but not yet chaotic, a hum building beneath the surface. Michael spoke as they walked. "Marcus has already reached out to the New York office. There will be a full briefing later today. Your meeting with the investment group has been moved to a private suite to ensure comfort." Ava frowned. "Moved? What happened to the original conference room?" Michael hesitated for a split second. "It's being used for something else," he said carefully. "Your experience yesterday prompted several emergency board discussions. Leadership wants privacy to handle those matters." Aria felt a sting of nervous curiosity. "Emergency discussions? About us?" "In part," Dana said, "but also about the system, about what needs to change, about what needs to be built." Her eyes softened. "You shook the ground yesterday, and it needed shaking." Ava and Aria shared a glance, one filled with equal parts pride and heaviness. They hadn't meant to trigger a corporate upheaval. They'd simply wanted dignity. But sometimes dignity came with consequences bigger than intended. The escort team led them through a quiet, private corridor that emptied into a sleek VIP arrival lounge. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the runways. Morning light streamed in gently, warming the room. A barista stood ready behind a small coffee counter. "Ladies," Dana said, Please feel free to relax. We have refreshments, breakfast options, and private car service waiting whenever you're ready. Aria blinked. A car? Michael nodded. Compliments of corporate. Ava shifted uncomfortably. We don't want special treatment. That's not why we. Michael lifted a hand gently. It's not special treatment, he said. It's accountability. Dana added. And respect. The tension eased from the room. Aria approached the window, letting the sunlight warm her face. The view calmed her, a slow, grounding moment after hours of emotional whiplash. Ava joined her quietly. Are you okay? Ava asked. Aria nodded slowly. I think so. Just overwhelmed. Me too. Ava looked out at the planes taxiing in the distance. Feels like everything shifted overnight. Aria exhaled. It did. They both stood there, letting the stillness settle around them. 10 minutes later, they were seated with warm coffees, Ava with a latte, Aria with a simple black roast. They sipped in silence at first, savoring the heat and the calm. Then Aria spoke. Ava, do you think we're ready for today? After everything? After yesterday? Ava rested her elbow on the table. I think so. The work hasn't changed, the stakes haven't changed. And us? Ava smiled softly. We haven't changed either. We're tired and bruised, but we're still us. Aria stared into her cup. Sometimes I wonder if people will ever see us without prejudice, she said quietly. Without filtering us through whatever story they've told themselves. Ava nodded. Some won't. Some never will. That's a depressing thought. Maybe, Ava said gently. But here's the other side of it. Every day we exist in these rooms, we make space for someone else, someone watching, someone who needs to see us take up space without apology. Aria's chest warmed. You always know what to say. Only because I've lived it too, Ava murmured. The honesty in her voice made Aria's eyes soften. Their quiet moment was interrupted by Dana approaching with a cautious expression. Ladies, she said carefully, I have something to inform you. Both twins straightened. You're not in trouble, she clarified quickly. Nothing like that. Ava let out a breath. Okay, what is it? Dana folded her hands. Corporate has opened a formal ethics investigation, she began. It's already underway, and several upper-level managers have been suspended pending review. Aria froze. Because of us? She asked. Dana paused. Because of what was revealed through your experience, she said gently. You didn't cause the problem. You exposed it. Aria swallowed. Ava's voice was quiet. Who was suspended? Dana hesitated. Regional directors. Some corporate policy heads. And Linda Moore has been formally banned from Skylux services. Ava blinked. Banned? Dana nodded. Indefinitely. What she said wasn't just rude, it was discriminatory and unethical, and the company is legally obligated to respond. Aria exhaled slowly. Dana continued carefully. There's more. Her behavior triggered a review of her travel history and customer interactions. There were patterns. Ava's stomach twisted. Patterns? She repeated. Multiple documented incidents, Dana said. Most of them overlooked or dismissed. Aria felt heat rise behind her eyes, not anger, but grief. How many times, she whispered, did she do this to someone who didn't have the power we had yesterday? Dana didn't have an answer. Instead, she lowered her head respectfully. You gave corporate no choice but to address what they had ignored for too long. The twins absorbed this quietly. Heavy, painful, necessary. Ava finally nodded. Thank you for telling us. Dana stepped back, letting them have space again. Ava leaned her head back against the lounge chair and closed her eyes. That's a lot to take in. Aria nodded, voice faint. Yeah. Do you regret anything? Ava asked softly. Aria shook her head. No. I regret that it had to happen. But not that we stood our ground. Ava opened her eyes and looked at her sister. That's the difference between guilt and responsibility, she murmured. We carry one, not the other. Aria's eyes softened. You really are the anchor. And you're the voice, Ava whispered back. We need both. A moment passed before Michael returned, speaking gently. Your car is ready whenever you are. No rush. Ava stood, smoothing her blazer. Thank you. Aria rose beside her, confidence settling back into her shoulders like armor she had momentarily set down. As they followed Michael and Dana toward the private exit, sunlight streamed across their path, warm, steady, familiar. New York awaited. Their investors awaited. And the next chapter awaited. Not because they sought a fight. Not because they wanted attention. But because they had earned their place in every room they walked into. And this time, the world had no choice but to acknowledge it. The car ride from JFK into Manhattan was unusually quiet. The morning sun had risen fully now, washing the city in that warm, golden light. New York only seems to have for a few early hours before the horns, the rushing crowds, and the endless noise swallowed it whole. Ava watched the skyline pass through the tinted window. Tall buildings glimmered like polished steel. Pedestrians hurried along crosswalks. Delivery trucks rumbled through alleyways. A city waking up and sprinting at the same time. Aria sat beside her, one leg crossed over the other, hands folded tightly in her lap. She wasn't anxious, not exactly, but her body held a tension that hadn't released since yesterday. "Are you rehearsing what you'll say?" Ava asked gently. Aria exhaled through her nose. "Maybe. A little. You've done this 100 times," Ava reminded her. "You could pitch Credora in your sleep." "I know," Aria murmured. "It's not the pitch. It's everything surrounding it." Ava turned slightly. "Meaning?" Aria hesitated. "Meaning, I don't know what the investors have heard, or how much of yesterday has leaked." Ava frowned. "Corporate said they wouldn't discuss it." "It doesn't have to be discussed," Aria said quietly. "Things travel." Ava knew that was true. Reputation, especially for women like them, often traveled faster than facts. She reached over and rested a hand on Aria's arm. "Then we'll walk in the same way we always do," Ava said. "With our heads high, with our work speaking louder than anything else." Aria nodded, her lips pressed together. "I just want to make sure we're not walking in as a story," she admitted. "I want to walk in as CEOs." Ava squeezed her arm gently. "We are CEOs. We don't have to prove that with anything other than our presence." Aria breathed out, letting the reassurance settle. "Right," she whispered. "Presence." The car pulled up to the entrance of Hudson Tower, the glass skyscraper where their investor meeting would be held. The building rose high into the sky, its reflective surface catching sunlight like a blade. A uniformed doorman greeted them as they stepped out. "Good morning, Miss Thompson." "Miss Thompson," he said politely, as if he already knew who they were. Ava raised an eyebrow. "They briefed you?" He smiled knowingly. Hudson Tower stays prepared. Inside the lobby, marble floors gleamed under bright lights. A massive sculpture of interlocking bronze rings dominated the center, symbolizing connection, innovation, ambition. Aria stared at it for a moment. "It looks heavy," she murmured. Ava glanced at her. "Everything in this building looks heavy." But her tone carried humor, softening the tension. They approached the private elevator. A receptionist scanned their names, nodded respectfully, and guided them to the lift. "Conference Suite 52B, she said. "Your team is already preparing the room." Our team. Those words still felt surreal sometimes. Growing up, they dreamed of having a team. Now, they had one. A small but strong one. People who believed in them because they had built something worth believing in. The elevator doors closed. As they ascended, Aria's fingers tapped anxiously against her thigh. Ava noticed. "Nervous?" Ava asked. "A little." "Me too." Aria blinked. "Really?" Ava nodded. "I always get nervous before investor meetings. Doesn't matter how many we've done." "Then why don't you show it?" Ava thought about that for a moment. "Because I'm afraid if I let it out," she said softly, "I won't be able to contain it." Aria absorbed that quietly. "You carry more than you say," Aria whispered. Ava smiled, though her eyes lingered on the light panel overhead. "And you feel more than you admit." Aria offered a small, warm laugh. "We're a pair." "The perfect pair," Ava said. The elevator chimed as it reached the 52nd floor. The doors opened into a quiet hallway lined with abstract paintings. Soft carpeting muffled their footsteps as they approached the private suite. Inside, the room was spacious, sleek, and bordered with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. The morning sunlight reflected on the water, scattering shimmering light across the walls. Three individuals stood waiting. A middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a confident posture, Grace Donovan, senior partner of Armitage Capital. Next to her, a younger man with an analytical expression, Elliot Park, technology strategist, and a quiet, observant older gentleman, Mr. Harold Whitlock, chairman of the firm. Ava and Aria exchanged a quick, steadying look before stepping forward. Grace Donovan approached first, extending her hand. "Miss Thompson," Grace said to Ava. Then to Aria, "Miss Thompson, welcome." Both sisters shook her hand firmly. "We've heard excellent things about your work," Grace continued. Aria's heart skipped, but Grace's tone wasn't loaded. No hidden insinuation. No reference to yesterday. No curiosity about gossip. Just professionalism. Ava relaxed slightly. "Thank you," she said. "We're excited to be here." Mr. Whitlock stepped forward, shaking both of their hands warmly. "I've been following Credora since your Phoenix showcase," he said. "Your approach to financial accessibility is one of the most promising models we've seen." Ava blinked, genuinely surprised. "You were at Phoenix?" He chuckled. "I was in the back. I don't like making my presence known unless necessary." Aria smiled. "We appreciate your support." Elliot Park stepped forward last. "I've reviewed your data models. I have several questions, but they're good questions, the kind that come from admiration, not skepticism." Ava felt warmth settle in her chest. This was what they wanted. A room that saw their work, not their identity, first. Their minds, not assumptions. Their product, not the stereotypes. Grace gestured toward the table. "Shall we get started?" For the next 45 minutes, Ava and Aria presented, answered questions, broke down analytics, explained projections, and outlined their expansion strategy. And with each answer, with each slide, with each thoughtful exchange, they reclaimed something intangible. They reclaimed authority. They reclaimed presence. They reclaimed themselves. Elliot asked a pointed question about cross-platform integration. Aria answered with precise clarity. Grace probed their risk mitigation approach. Ava broke it down with calm, mathematical confidence. Mr. Whitlock asked how their mission connected to their long-term goals. Both answered together, not rehearsed, not planned, just aligned, as if the room itself recognized their rhythm. At one point, Grace leaned back in her chair, studying them with an expression that was not subtle admiration but something deeper. Respect, not courtesy, not politeness, actual respect. "You two have remarkable synergy," Grace said. "Rare to see this level of alignment." Ava nodded. "It comes from building from scratch together." Aria added softly, "And from surviving the same storms?" Grace's expression shifted gently. "Storms shape strong teams." Something in Aria's chest tightened. "And strong teams build strong companies." Grace smiled. When the presentation ended, Mr. Whitlock rose first. "Ladies," he said, "your company is not just promising, it's necessary. We'd like to move forward with the next phase of investment review." A wave of relief washed through Ava's body. She kept her posture composed, but internally her shoulders dropped several inches. Aria released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Thank you," Ava said warmly. "We appreciate your confidence," Aria added. Grace stepped closer. "And," Grace said softly, "for what it's worth, whatever happened yesterday does not define you, and it certainly doesn't define your work." Ava stilled. Aria's breath caught. Grace held their gaze. "Yes," she said, "we heard some things, but what we care about is how you carry yourselves. And I must say, your grace under pressure speaks volumes." Aria felt emotion swell in her chest. Ava steadied her voice. "Thank you. Truly." Grace nodded. "We value leaders with resilience, and you have that in abundance." As the meeting concluded and they exited the suite, Aria leaned close to her sister, voice soft. "Ava, I feel proud." Ava smiled. "You should." "No," Aria said, shaking her head slightly. "Proud of us. Proud of how we showed up. Proud of how we didn't let yesterday define today." Ava's eyes softened. "I'm proud of us too," she whispered. They stepped into the elevator together, letting the doors close softly around them. For the first time since the confrontation in Dallas, Ava felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Relief. Pure, steady, earned relief. And for the first time since yesterday, Aria felt something deeper, reclaiming. They had not just survived the storm. They had transmuted it, turned pain into purpose, fear into power, and humiliation into momentum. The elevator descended, carrying them back into the city. But the truth was clear now. Shimmering like the early sun on the Hudson, this wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning. The elevator doors opened into the lobby with a soft chime. Ava and Aria walked out side by side, their steps lighter than when they had arrived hours earlier. The warmth of success, quiet, steady, well-earned, still lingered around them like a protective aura. Outside, Manhattan had fully awakened. Taxi horns echoed. People hurried along sidewalks with purpose. Food carts released aromatic steam into the crisp morning air. The city pulsed with life, impatient, relentless, unstoppable. But for once, the twins didn't feel rushed by it. They felt aligned with it. A private car waited near the entrance, just like before. Michael Tran stood beside it, speaking with the driver. When he saw the sisters, his expression softened. "How did it go?" he asked. Ava exchanged a knowing glance with Aria. "It went well," Ava said. "Very well," Aria added with a small smile. Michael nodded, relief clear on his face. "Good. You deserved a win today." Ava smirked. It was more than a win. It was clarity. Michael raised a brow. "Clarity?" Ava shrugged lightly. "Let's just say, they saw us." Aria added quietly. "Not the story. Not the drama. Us." Michael's expression warmed. "That's all that matters." He opened the car door for them. "Your hotel is expecting you. You have the afternoon free. After what you've endured, I hope you'll take time to breathe." Ava chuckled. "Breathing sounds like a plan." Aria glanced back at Hudson Tower. "But first, maybe coffee?" Ava nodded. "Definitely coffee." Michael smiled. "Enjoy your day, ladies." As the car pulled away from the curb, Aria leaned her head against the window, watching the crowded streets glide past. "We did good," she murmured. Ava nodded softly. "We did." But even as the city moved around them, Ava felt the subtle vibration of her phone in her pocket. She pulled it out. One new message, from Marcus Reed. Ava stiffened slightly. "What is it?" Aria asked. "Marcus wants to talk," Ava said. Aria straightened. "Now?" Ava nodded. "He says it's important." The car hummed softly. The city noise faded behind the glass. Ava pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice. Then, "Ava," Marcus said, his deep voice steady but edged with something heavy. "Are you somewhere safe to talk?" Ava's brows knitted together. "Yes. Aria's with me." "Good," he replied. "You both need to hear this." Aria shifted, her pulse quickening. "What's going on?" Aria asked. Marcus took a breath on the other end. "Ladies," he began slowly, "the fallout from yesterday is far larger than expected." Ava and Aria exchanged tense glances. "How large?" Ava asked. Marcus's tone grew heavier. "Skylux is restructuring," he said. "Nearly half the senior management team is being audited. Multiple suspensions, some terminations." Aria's chest tightened. "Because of the lounge?" "Because of what the lounge exposed," Marcus said firmly. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the tip of a very ugly iceberg. Ava closed her eyes. She knew. She had felt it. The rot beneath the surface. "What about Marilyn?" Aria asked quickly. Marcus paused. "She's safe," he said. "In fact, she's being promoted." Aria let out a breath of relief. "Promoted to what?" Ava asked. "To head of our new training overhaul," Marcus said. Her integrity stood out. "She's going to fix what others allowed to break." Ava felt genuine warmth in her chest. "She deserves that." "She does," Marcus agreed. A moment passed. "But there's something else," he added quietly. Ava braced. "Tell us." Marcus exhaled slowly, as if preparing himself. "Linda Moore's behavior caused a cascade of investigations," he said. "Not just inside Skylux." Aria frowned. "What do you mean?" "Her husband's firm, Moore and Kensington," Marcus continued, "just lost their largest corporate partnership. The board held an emergency session last night. The firm's reputation is damaged." "Severely." Aria's pulse quickened. Ava leaned forward. Marcus, what happened? Marcus didn't soften his tone. Richard Moore has resigned. Aria's breath caught. Ava's throat tightened. He resigned? She repeated. Yes, Marcus said. Effective immediately. His standing in the legal community is compromised. They're spinning the story as a personal matter, but everyone knows the truth. Aria swallowed hard. Oh, God. Marcus didn't speak. Neither did the twins. The car's interior felt suddenly warmer, the air heavier. Ava finally whispered, "We never wanted to destroy anyone. We just wanted to be treated fairly." "I know," Marcus said gently, "and I need you to hear this. This outcome wasn't your doing. Linda's behavior created the fallout, not your response to it." Aria rubbed her forehead. "Still, it feels heavy." Marcus's voice softened. "Accountability always does." Silence settled in again. Then Marcus said something unexpected. "And there's one more thing." Aria tensed. "Marcus." "No, this is a good thing," he assured. He paused. Then, "The board has approved a new initiative, inspired by you." Ava blinked. "By us?" "Yes," Marcus said. "It'll be announced next quarter. A new program, the Skylux Rising Voices Fellowship, a leadership pipeline to support young professionals of color entering the aviation and corporate sectors." Aria's eyes widened. Ava felt her breath catch. "You're serious?" Ava whispered. "Very," Marcus said. "You lit a fire we didn't know we needed, and now change is coming." Aria placed a hand over her heart. "Marcus, this means everything." "It's overdue," Marcus replied. "And it's because you stood your ground with grace. You didn't shout. You didn't escalate. You held your dignity, and that forced the company to confront its own failures." Ava stared out the window, her reflection blinking back at her. She didn't feel triumph. She didn't feel victory. She felt something deeper. Meaning. Marcus cleared his throat. "I'll let you two rest," he said. "But before I go, just know this. What happened wasn't just a moment. It became a movement." The call ended. Ava lowered the phone slowly. Aria stared at her sister. "Ava." Ava nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know." They didn't speak for a long while. The city moved outside, lights flickered on, taxi drivers shouted, steam rose from subway vents. Life continued, loud and unapologetic. Inside the car, the twins sat in silence, absorbing the magnitude of everything that had unfolded. Aria finally broke the quiet. "Do you think we were ready for this?" she asked softly. Ava looked at her sister, really looked at her. "No," Ava said honestly. "I don't think anyone is ready to become the catalyst for something this big." Aria gave a faint smile. "At least we weren't alone." "Never alone," Ava whispered. Their shoulders leaned together naturally, two lines converging into one steady form. Two women shaped by storms. Two sisters rising through fire. Two leaders who hadn't asked to change the world but did anyway. Not by shouting. Not by fighting. Simply by refusing to shrink. The car turned onto a quieter street near their hotel, the chaos fading behind them. Aria whispered, "Ava?" "Yeah? I think I'm finally starting to understand." "Understand what?" Aria smiled softly. "That our presence isn't just about us, it's about everyone watching, everyone who needs to see what's possible." Ava exhaled, her chest warming. "That," she said, "is exactly why we keep showing up." The car slowed to a stop. A new day waited outside the door. A different world than the one they had left in Dallas. A world rearranged because they refused to surrender their seats, literally and figuratively. And the ripple was only beginning. The lobby of the Park Regency Hotel was calm, modern, and softly lit. Warm golden lamps glowed against wooden accents. Soft jazz hummed low from hidden speakers. A small fountain bubbled gently near the reception desk. It was peaceful, something the twins hadn't felt, not truly, in more than 24 hours. As they stepped through the glass doors, the weight of the world seemed to pause. For a moment, the hotel smelled like safety lavender, polished stone, and something faintly citrus. The kind of scent that told travelers they had arrived somewhere meant to hold them, not test them. A concierge approached with a polite smile. Miss Thompson, he greeted. "Welcome. Your suite is ready." Aria blinked. Our suite? Yes, he said kindly. A gift from Skylux Corporate. Please allow me to show you. Ava and Aria followed him toward a private elevator that required a key card. Aria whispered, I'm still not used to this. Ava smiled faintly. What, the surprise upgrades? Or the universe rearranging itself because of one confrontation? Both. Aria murmured. The elevator doors opened onto the penthouse corridor. Thick carpeting muffled their steps. When the concierge unlocked the suite, the door swung open with a quiet click. The room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows curved around the living area, offering a panoramic view of Manhattan, the Hudson, the skyline, the streets webbed with movement. Natural light filled the space, turning everything soft and warm. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't gaudy. It was beautiful in a calm, grounded way. Aria walked toward the windows, her breath catching softly. Ava, look at this. Ava joined her, eyes widening as she took in the sweeping view. It's incredible, she whispered. She wasn't talking about the skyline. She was talking about standing there, with her sister, still whole, still standing. After everything, they set their bags down and took a few minutes to breathe. Not rush, not plan, just breathe. When Aria finally sank into the soft couch, she let out a long, deep exhale. I feel like my body's been clenched for a day and a half, she admitted. Ava sat beside her. That's because it has. Aria chuckled weakly. Yeah. Ava rested her arm along the back of the couch. There was a long, comfortable silence. Then Aria said softly, Ava, can I tell you something kind of heavy? Always. Aria took a moment, picking at the fabric of a throw pillow. Her voice came out quiet, almost fragile. When Linda said what she said, when she tried to move us, a part of me just for a split second felt like I didn't belong. Ava's heart clenched hard. Aria. No, let me finish, Aria said. I hate that I felt it. I hate that I still have that place inside me that can be shaken by someone like her. Ava turned her body fully toward her sister. Feeling shaken doesn't mean you don't belong, she said softly. It means you're human, and deeply aware of the world we live in. Aria looked up, eyes glossy. It made me feel like I was back in high school, she whispered. Back in those hallways where people assumed things about us before we even opened our mouths. Ava's throat tightened. Those years were hard, Ava whispered, and the world still tries to repeat them sometimes. But that feeling, that split second? She took Aria's hand. It's not truth. It's trauma. Aria blinked, tears forming. Ava continued gently. And trauma doesn't get to define who you are now. You define it. Every time you speak, every time you lead, every time you step into a room like the one this morning. Aria breathed shakily. I'm tired of carrying that old pain. And you don't have to carry it alone, Ava said. You never have. Aria finally let a tear fall. Not many, just one. A release, not a breakdown. A healing. After a few minutes, Aria wiped her eyes gently. Thanks, she murmured. For what? Ava asked. For seeing me. Ava smiled softly. Always. Aria leaned back, letting her head rest on the couch. Can I tell you something else? Go ahead. I'm proud of us, Aria whispered. Not just for how we handled yesterday, but for everything. For building Credora, for surviving the things no one saw. Ava's chest warmed. I'm proud of us too. Aria turned her head. And Ava? Yeah, I'm proud of you. Ava swallowed. Why? Because you stayed calm. Because you fought for me without raising your voice. Because you carried yourself with dignity even when you were hurting. Ava's eyes softened. And I'm proud of you, she replied, because you felt everything honestly. Because you didn't numb yourself. Because you stood in your truth. Aria let out a shaky laugh. We really are two halves, huh? Ava nodded. Two halves of the same fire. A knock sounded at the suite door. They exchanged a puzzled look. Ava opened it. Another hotel staff member stood there with a sealed envelope on a silver tray. This arrived for you, Miss Thompson, he said. Which Miss Thompson? Ava asked with a small smile. He smiled back. According to the note, both. Ava took the envelope with a polite nod and closed the door. She sat beside Aria and opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter on Skylux stationery. Ava began reading aloud. Asterisk, asterisk, Ava and Aria. Today, the board convened for an unscheduled emergency session. What happened in Dallas exposed more than misconduct. It exposed a culture we allowed to fester. A culture that harmed you and many others who never had your platform. We cannot change the past, but we can change the future. And we intend to. Asterisk, asterisk. Ava paused. Her eyes flicked to Aria, who urged her to continue. Asterisk, asterisk, your father raised extraordinary women, not because of his title, but because of your strength, your grace, and your refusal to shrink. Skylux will be announcing a new corporate code, new training standards, and new leadership expectations. Your experience has become the catalyst we should have acted on years ago. We are grateful not for the pain you endured, but for the courage you showed. If you're willing, we'd like to invite both of you to speak at our annual leadership summit next quarter, not as guests, but as partners in shaping the future. Asterisk, asterisk. With respect, Marcus Reed. Aria leaned back slowly. Speak at their summit, she murmured. Ava folded the letter carefully. Marcus doesn't exaggerate. If he says partners, he means it. Aria exhaled. That's huge. Ava nodded. It is. Silence settled again, this time not heavy, but full. A silence that felt like a new chapter taking shape. They ordered lunch, they showered, they rested, they answered a handful of essential emails. Eventually, they walked barefoot across the suite's large rug, letting the softness ground them. When the sun began to set, they stood together at the window again. The city glowed below thousands of lights, flickering like a constellation born on Earth. Aria spoke first. You know what I realized today? What? That healing doesn't always happen in quiet places. Ava turned slightly. Sometimes, Aria continued, it happens right after the chaos, when the dust settles and you finally let yourself breathe. Ava smiled. And sometimes, she said softly, healing looks like two sisters standing in a penthouse after surviving something ugly and choosing to move forward with gentleness instead of anger. Aria looked over, eyes warm. You think we're gentle? Ava grinned. We're a different kind of gentle, the kind that doesn't break. Aria nodded. Good. I don't want to break. Ava slipped her arm around her sister's shoulders. You won't, she whispered. We won't. They watched the skyline in silence. Two silhouettes framed against the fading light. Two women who refused to be pushed aside, even when the world tried its hardest. Two forces of nature who didn't need vengeance to feel whole, just truth, dignity, and a chance to keep building what mattered. Ava exhaled softly. Aria? Yeah? I'm glad we didn't give up our seats. Aria smiled. So am I. Because in the end, the seats weren't just on a plane. They were the seats they earned in every room they walked into. Seats built from grit, from brilliance, from pain, from possibility. And from now on, no one would ever take those seats from them again. The story of black twins told to give up. VIP seats. 5 minutes later, crew fired, is more than just an airport lounge confrontation. It reflects the experiences of so many people, feeling overlooked, judged, pushed out of their rightful place. From Ava and Aria's journey, we see a familiar but ever-true lesson. Dignity cannot be bought, and certainly cannot be taken away unless we allow it. The sisters don't scream, don't fight, don't lose their cool. They stand up with composure, with wisdom, and with the strength of their dignity. And it's that calmness that resonates louder than any scolding. We can't control how the world treats us, but we can control how we respond. Sometimes change doesn't come from the loudest people, it comes from those who hold their own when they're most offended. This story also reminds us that a wrong action, no matter how small, can have unintended consequences. And sometimes, a right action, even if it's silent, can open the way for many others. Finally, there's hope. That in a world full of prejudice, there's still room for kindness, honesty, and fairness. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If it makes you think, touches something in your heart, or reminds you of yourself, it's my greatest honor. Please like, share, and subscribe so these humane stories can continue to reach more people. Thank you so much for joining us.